All right, well, welcome everybody. How about this? Welcome everybody. I may still be clicking admit for those latecomers getting settled in. I'm Dina Kell. I am the licensed clinician from the Counseling Team International. If you're a student, or a cadet, I've likely taught you in the most recent classes. Forgive me for I'm looking at the screen, making sure I'm admitting everybody because there's a waiting room, and anyone that wants to join, I have to click admit, and my glasses aren't on, and yeah, that whole thing. All right, so tonight this is a special presentation that is really a lot of fun to do in person because we get some interaction and I get to hear from everybody that comes and attends, but based on our circumstances right now, we're having to go this route. So I will do my best to make it as interactive as possible when you have questions. I'll leave some time at the end for questions. Likely we won't be more than an hour, but that's really up to you guys. If I will stay here all night to answer any questions that you want, because this is definitely an area of passion for me. So I grew up in a law enforcement family and I was married to a cop, and it's just a unique way of life. It's a different kind of marriage when you're married to a cop. And I want to be respectful of language. Is there any kids on here? I don't even know how you're going to tell me. You might have to put a chat in the chat box. If you're able to do that, let me know if there's anyone I should be mindful of. I'm assuming that you're all here because you're interested in hearing more and learning about what it's like with marriage and family and law enforcement. So hopefully this presentation will help shed some light on why it's unique, and we'll talk about some of the nuances there. All right, so let's see. Here we go. So first of all, marriage myths exist in all marriage. We kind of tend to think that good marriages will just happen if you choose the right partner. Actually, no, good marriages happen when you work on it and when you consciously make the right effort. It's not necessarily about the right partner, the right match, but it's about working together and working through difficulties as they come up. Disagreements shouldn't happen. That's another myth that I hear a lot. We argue all the time. Well, if you're arguing in a healthy way, then disagreements are going to happen. It's just how you get through them. And if you need some tips to assist you in getting through them, that will make all the difference. Spouses should always know what each other needs. Definitely not. We're not mind readers. People are not mind readers. And, I hear this one a lot. Well, if I have to tell him I want flowers, then just forget it. I don't want them. Well, trust me, your partner wants to be told what floats your boat and what makes you happy so that they can do that. It's genuinely an effort towards making you happy or making the relationship work. So communication is key. My favorite question, and you may want to jot down some of these zingers here and there, but one of my favorite questions is, what can I do to help? And if you ask your partner, your loved one, even your children, what can I do to help? Listen for the answer and see how you can make that happen. Having children will bring you closer. Maybe, maybe not, but if you're a parent, you know how incredibly challenging being a parent is. So careful and make sure your communication is nice and solid before adding children to the mix. So it's taking a little time for me to advance my slide. Here we go. Sex will take care of itself, not even close. I'm hoping you can hear me. I feel like maybe you won't hear me. Nope. Okay. sex will sometimes, if you're a parent, you've experienced this, having to schedule time to get sex in. It's another investment in the relationship that needs attending to, and sometimes you got to schedule it. It's unfortunately the way the world works in our busy schedules. Change will be easy if you stick together. No way. Change is hard for everyone. Again, communication is key. And another marriage myth is that divorce is always an option. It's probably a bad idea to enter into marriage or into a relationship with the idea that, well, divorce is always an option. There tends to be a giving up that may happen before all other solutions have been explored. So keeping that in mind. I want to, going to communication. Before I show you that, I want to show you something else. Stand by. There's a great video. As soon as I can pull it up, we'll see here. Can you see that? Hold on. Oops, hold on. My bad. Stand by.
Maybe the nail is causing.
You always do this. It's just, there's all this pressure, you know? And sometimes it feels like it's right up on me. And I can just feel it, like literally feel it in my head. And it's relentless. And I don't know if it's going to stop. I mean, that's the thing that scares me the most, is that I don't know if it's ever going to stop.
Yeah. Well, you do have a nail in your head.
It is not about the nail.
Are you sure? Because, I mean, I'll bet if we got that out of there...
Stop trying to fix it.
No, I'm not trying to fix it. I'm just pointing out that maybe the nail is causing...
You always do this. You always try to fix things when what I really need is for you to just listen.
Yeah, see, I don't think that is what you need. I think what you need is to get the nail
See,
out.
you're not even listening now.
Okay, fine. I will listen. Fine.
It's just... Sometimes it's like there's this achy... I don't know what it is. And I'm not sleeping very well at all. And all my sweaters are snagged. I mean, all of them.
Yeah, that sounds really hard.
It is. Thank you. Ow!
Oh, come on. Ow. If you would just...
Don't...
Try to see things my way. Do I have to keep on talking till I can't go on? We can work it out.
Isn't that just so much like relationships? Typically in a relationship, you have one or the other, a talker or a fixer. Unfortunately, I'm trying to get back to, hello, where's my mouse? And it's difficult to manage that because if you're a fixer, you are going to run into some problems. Oh, someone identifies with that one. It definitely becomes a challenge, but here's the thing. The person that needs the other one to listen, it would be really good for you to say, I just need you to listen. In relationships, we want to help our partner. We want to fix it. We want to take away what's hurting them or bothering them. So, you know, let's give them the benefit of the doubt for that. But often the one that's talking really just wants to vent and be validated. And notice in, you know, in the video with the nail, he's like, oh, that must be so hard. And she was like, she melted. Oh, you're right. I'm so glad you listened. Now you get it. So it's important to communicate what you need. Do you need some solutions? Do you need some suggestions or advice, or do you just need a sounding board? And none of it's right or wrong. It's a matter of what you need. So Guys, typically, listen a little more. And gals, if you need to just vent, let him know. I just need to vent. Please, I don't want advice. I don't want suggestions. I don't want you to tell me how I was wrong. Just listen. All right. So, law enforcement marriages, law enforcement relationships. Welcome to the law enforcement culture. If you are on here and you are attending with your loved one to watch this, hopefully you won't be too shocked by all of this information I'm about to tell you. But with the law enforcement culture, it's not a job. It's a way of life. It's a culture. As you're seeing, unfortunately, there's this great division right now, and it seems like there's a lot of hate towards law enforcement. That's always existed, to be honest. It's just a lot more ramped up right now and a lot more in the media and in our faces. And that's really challenging. I personally know 3 people that filed their retirement papers early. They were like, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. I'm done. I'll leave it to the new guys. And if you saw, there was some report, I think it was New York, had like a huge percentage increase year over year of early retirements. So definitely there's that sense of this is getting tough, but stress, hypervigilance, emotional challenges, all of that is very common in the law enforcement culture. That emotional control will become noticeable. I'll get to that in a second. The stressors are always there. The constant public scrutiny, peer pressure, working in isolation. You know, it's a very different ball game when you're out in a black and white all by yourself, or when you're in charge of a yard all by yourself. You know, it's very isolating. It's isolating work. The skills that you learn are perishable. You have to continue to renew them. Staying fit is super, super important. Staying fit will save your life if you ever need your strength and your stamina to save your life. So staying fit is really important. I always challenge guys, hey, if you've been on the job 10 years, could you pass a fitness test right now? It's important. It's important to your life and your safety and the safety of your fellow officers. Old friends and family tend not to get it. They don't understand why your loved one has changed so much. You know, this is a common one. Oh, he's changed ever since he became a cop. Yeah, that's kind of the point. That's exactly what needed to happen. And unfortunately, it can create a little bit of a divide or a division in families. Adrenaline spikes and dumps are challenging to live with. And so they happen, and you have to get accustomed to that. This is a key component to starting off so when you enter home, talk about with your loved one what amount of time and what amount of space they need to de-stress from the day or to set the reset button. For me in my house, I have to change my clothes. I have to put my hair back, and then I am ready to engage with the rest of the household, which is typically only my daughter. But she knows, don't talk to me. If I'm coming in the house carrying all my stuff and still dressed, I need to change and get de-stressed from the day. So that's an important factor to communicate with your loved one. It may change over time as the stressors of the job or that day was really tough. It's okay to ask them, do you need a little more time before we eat dinner together or before we go out for a run or whatever it is. Just have that communication. I highly, highly, highly recommend this book called The Emotional Survival for Law Enforcement. It's really small, it's really easy to read, and it has so much great information about your loved one. There will be things in there that might be shocking or scary, but it's just helpful information to preload you if you're reading this before knowing about what it's like to be in law enforcement. It's a very, very helpful read. There's also good things in there too about what to do and how to cope and things like that. At some point, my mouse is there. It is the new normal. I kind of hate that word, new normal, but I've been using that term in teaching this class for a good 10 years. So although we're talking about the new normal with COVID, the new normal comes with the onset of your loved one entering into shift work and having sleep schedules that will be off. When I was married to my cop, he worked nights and I worked days. And so we were, we pass each other, and that can be challenging. So shift work, off sleep schedules, long hours. There will be missed events, and missed holidays. You've got to come up with workarounds and understanding that, unfortunately, especially being new, you don't have much say or seniority about taking holidays off. Getting creative can be helpful, though. In the past, I've spent Thanksgivings with different police departments, and we had a potluck and just enjoyed the time, and sometimes family would come, and that's helpful too. It's going to be tough when your loved one gets held over a shift or a half of a shift, and you were really looking forward to them coming home. Unfortunately, that will happen, especially being new. Crisis driven and unpredictable. This line of work is not a factory of widgets. Every day changes. Your loved one's head is on a swivel, and that's difficult to turn off once they get home. So this hypervigilance tends to stick around, and it takes a lot of effort to settle down that nervous system when you get back home. So this sort of roller coaster of adrenaline dumps and spikes is a common theme, and can be challenging. Injuries can happen, and the scary part about injuries is they can be potentially career ending. So this is why fitness is so important, to also stave off injuries. And that's also a scary event to consider, but an important conversation to have, as in the preparation for, or what would happen if I couldn't do this job anymore. I know that's the last thing you want to think about, but it's not a bad conversation to have, to consider that plan B. Being a public servant, you are under the public eye. Your loved one is under the public eye, and unfortunately, their own personal beliefs and views can't be expressed necessarily. Being a public servant is really challenging, especially right now, if you have differing beliefs than sort of what the general public is serving up. Community orienting policing is quite popular and important. I guess I can't say enough about, when you're a public servant, your opinion can't really matter anymore. Unfortunately, you're here to serve the public. And that doesn't mean you take a beating. That doesn't mean you take a knee. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying, be cautious about speaking out, especially being new and on probation. Social media gets guys and gals in a lot of trouble. So be mindful of that you're a public servant. So how do you thrive? It's not about how to survive. It's how do you thrive in this new culture, in this new way of life, in this changing relationship you will have with your law enforcement officer. A network of support is huge. I cannot stress enough how important spouse groups were for me, and getting together with other families that are also in law enforcement and having picnics or date nights, or even babysitting swaps, or just create a network of support. If you already have one right now, fantastic. Use it more often. And if you need to build some more support in the law enforcement arena, begin to create that now. Be consistent. And this is difficult because the job can be very inconsistent, but if you're able to be consistent, put date nights on the calendar, put family dinner on the calendar, and protect that time. If I ask a room full of people that have been married over 20 years, what's the key to their long-term marriage? The number one thing they tell me is having a consistent date night. whether it's pick a Thursday or pick the third Saturday of the month or whatever it is, pick a day or a night and put it on the calendar and protect it. Same with family dinner. That becomes challenging, and it's important to put that as a priority. Pay attention to the stress level and signs and symptoms of stress reactions. Stress reactions are absolutely normal. The problem becomes when you're questioning what is wrong with you, or your officer's questioning what is wrong with me. There's signs and symptoms that stress may be getting to be too much. Our bodies will let us know when stress is too much. We might not be able to mentally think, oh, I'm really stressed out, but our body will get a headache or a stomach ache or back pains or shoulder aches or tightness, tension, things like that. Your body will let you know. So being mindful of how your body reacts to stress and what calms it down or what sort of de-stresses you is important. Boundaries. Boundaries are key. And I put on here media and social media and telling stories. This has more to do with communicating with each other or communicating with your family. Sorry, I'm having to hit admit, all you latecomers. Have boundaries with regard to what you're okay to hear about and what you're not comfortable hearing about. Let me give you an example. When I was married to my law enforcement officer, he would want to tell me stories, and I would listen to stories all day long. I'm happy to hear your stories. But then there came a point he wanted to show me pictures. I'm like, nope, no pictures. That's my boundary. I ain't going there. Don't show me the video of the body cam. Don't show me the video or the pictures of the dead baby. I don't want to see it. And unfortunately, right, I couldn't connect with him on that level because that's not something I was willing to manage. And it's okay to do that. Just know what your boundaries are. And for yourself, know what your limits are with regard to your social media or the media that you consume. Getting involved in debates or conversations on social media, or how much media you're watching. When a big incident happens, it tends to hit the media and go all over the place. And that can be very damaging and uncomfortable and difficult to watch and see. So be mindful of that and know your limits. What else do we got here? Discuss priorities together, write them down, and protect them. What are the priorities? Is the priority to stuff the bank account as high as we can? Is the priority to have as much together time as possible? Or we value trips and traveling, so is traveling a priority? Well, let's protect that and let's set aside the time and the money to be able to do that. Discuss these priorities so that you're both on the same page, or your family is all on the same page as to what we're all doing as a family and what we've all agreed to do. So sometimes when you're saving up for something special, the whole family has to tighten the belt, and knowing that we're all on the same page makes it a little bit easier. Communication is key. I've probably said it 50 times already in this presentation, but I'm going to give you a couple of tips that make communication better and easier. The first one I gave you a moment ago with that video, and that is asking, what can I do to help? Ask your partner, what can I do to help? Now, partner, you need to say, I need you to listen, or I need some advice, or whatever it is. And here's another tip. I feel blank when you blank. So here it is. I feel, fill it in with a feeling, fill it in with a description of the feeling. When you, this part is key. This when you has to be objective observation. So you can't say, I feel sad when you are mad at me. Why? Because they could say, I'm not mad. So it has to be objective observation. So I feel closed off when you stop sharing in the middle of your story, or something objective, something that can't be argued. I feel afraid when you slam the door. I feel dismissed when you turn and walk away from me when I'm talking. You see what I mean? So you're describing how you feel, and you're describing what the other person did objectively as much as possible. Now you've got some ground to discuss, and there's really no argument with your feeling. Your feeling is your feeling. It's just the way it is. And so we can talk about how can you adjust in the relationship to alleviate that. Stay curious and ask questions. There's a tendency for humans to get defensive when we're asked questions. But if you ask them in a form or in a way of curiosity, like I'm wondering about this, or I'm curious to know that, then you're just being inquisitive. I have a teenage daughter. She tends to get defensive when I ask anything. And I have to remind her, I'm just curious. I don't have an agenda. I'm just asking questions. I'm trying to learn about what you're saying or learn more about the circumstances. So staying curious and asking questions can be a real helpful tool in improving communication. All right, guess what? A good cop makes a really bad spouse. Let me clarify. You can't be a cop at home. You can't be a cop and a spouse at the same time. Still don't think I'm clarifying that still again. The qualities that make a good cop don't make a good spouse. All right. So this is not a guarantee, but rather a warning. Suspicion is common. Cynicism, high alert, hyper-focused. Those qualities are fantastic as a peace officer. Those are horrible as a spouse. The last thing your loved one wants to feel is that you're suspicious of their every move and you don't trust them, or you're hyper-focused, or you're constantly on high alert. And that may settle down over time when you both get on the same page. But I'll give you another example of this high alert. I was new in my marriage to my cop, and I wanted to run to the store. Just I wanted to go get milk or whatever it was, but it was late. It was like 11:30 at night. And he's like, absolutely not. And I was like, my head waggle went and everything. I was like, oh, you ain't telling me I can't go. And he was like, no, you're not leaving. That it's dangerous. It's not okay to, and really he didn't explain the dangerous part just yet. I kept probing, like, what is your deal? Why won't you let me go to the store? And then he came up with, well, nothing good happens after midnight is typically the phrase. But he was telling me, bad things happen at night. And a single woman alone in a parking lot at a grocery store at 11:30 at night is probably not the safest thing to do. But initially my reaction to his high alert and hyper focused was defensiveness. Like, don't tell me what to do. But then we were able to have a conversation with it. And then I just knew, all right, I'm just going to be more safe and follow his lead with regard to safety. Emotional control is valued as a cop, but not as a spouse, a parent, or a friend. This is going to happen if it hasn't already. Your loved one is going to say, I can't tell what you're thinking or feeling. And you're like, yep, that's a good thing. In the field, that's fantastic. While you're working and in uniform, fantastic. Emotional control is really important. You've just practiced how many months of that or how many weeks of that in the academy, right? Emotional control is very highly valued in the academy. And when you're being yelled at and told to do something and being criticized, you're not showing any emotion, right? First of all, it's not personal, but the goal is to get you to just take it and take it in stride, because I would rather you learn how to deal with it in the academy before you lose your shit out there on a bad guy or what have you. You will be called names potentially, and you need to maintain emotional control so you can focus, so you can make clear decisions and judgments. We can't have, loved ones, we can't have your loved one be emotional in the field. So it's difficult to make the transition back to home of letting the guard down. And that's why I'm such a big fan, and I stress so much of that de-stressing time when you come in the door. Go wash off the day, change your clothes, do whatever you need to do to separate work from home as much as possible. So just be mindful of that emotional control and how that can be difficult, especially in the future. relating to each other in the relationship. And it's okay to have a conversation about it. Like, yeah, I know you can't read my face, but let me tell you what I'm thinking and feeling. Next, controlling, I just went with this. Controlling emotions on the outside is vital, but can be damaging on the inside. So let me expound on this concept a little further. When you're so used to stuffing uncomfortable emotions, and you are used to sucking it up and going to the next call or procedure or whatever it is that you've got to do next, you didn't have time to unpack or process what you just experienced. So there's this tendency for this stuffing of emotion to accumulate over time. And that gets really damaging on the inside. It can begin to feel like, what is wrong with me? I'm always upset or anxious or angry or irritable. And you may not even be aware that you've got this, stuffed list of calls and experiences and interactions that were really damaging or hurtful or pissed you off or what have you. So be mindful of noticing that. It's perfectly fine and absolutely a good idea to be able to compartmentalize when you're on the job. By compartmentalize, I mean, in this interaction, this sucked. I was called bad names. This chick spit on me, whatever the circumstances would be. Then you've got to move on to the next thing or the next call. Guess what? You stick this in a box and you put it over there and you go, well, I can't deal with that right now. That's going to have to stay over there. And then you proceed because you need this clear space to be able to do the next thing. But if you never go back to that box, over time, you're going to have tons and tons of boxes to deal with. So it's important to go back to that thing you compartmentalized. Let me give you another example. If you get in an argument with your loved one while they're at work, that's challenging and difficult for them. And they may have to turn you off before you're ready to be turned off because they need to focus at work and for whatever they're doing. So be aware of that as well. All right. Balance and boundaries. So we all kind of know that the key to life is balance. That's difficult to do, especially in a new career. But how will you know if your marriage and family are thriving? How will you know if you've reached that balance or that sweet spot? That's a conversation you'll have to have. Check in with each other. If you're having those regular date nights or family dinners, then you're checking in with each other on a regular basis and you're able to gauge. One thing that's helpful is to say, I know this sucks right now. I know my schedule sucks right now, or I know this assignment sucks right now, and I really appreciate your support in this, or, thank you for making it doable for me when I come home, or whatever the case may be. Have a conversation about how everyone is doing. This way you'll always know if your marriage and family is thriving. Check in with each other. Setting priorities and protecting them. Those are the boundaries. Spoke about them in the slide before, but protect those priorities. Here's an example. Protecting my peace has been really important to me. I'm single, so I don't have to deal with another partner. Protecting my peace has been important. And so for me to do that, I have to set boundaries with regard to conversations I have, media I watch, really too much hate being thrown at me. To protect my peace, I have to set a boundary and go, no, I'm done with social media for today, or I'm not turning on the news, or whatever. So I have set a priority around that and protected it. You have to do the same thing in your relationship and with your family. If your priority is to be a very present dad, then protect that and set a boundary around it. I'm going to spend 30 minutes playing ball with my kid, or playing on the floor with my kid, or whatever the case may be, and really be fully present, because now you're investing in that relationship and that's a priority of yours, right? So setting priorities and protecting them with boundaries. Keep a variety of friends and activities. It's okay to have a lot of friends and do a lot of activities around law enforcement culture, but it's also nice to have a variety of friends that are outside of that culture too. Sometimes you don't recognize how different your life is until you start comparing notes with those that are not in law enforcement. I have to be very careful. My gallows humor has gotten pretty raunchy over the years, and I have to be mindful of who I'm telling things to. Keep doing what you love. This is so critical. Doing what you love is how you fill up your tank, how you replenish yourself. I don't care if it's, underwater basket weaving or coin collecting or playing golf. I know you won't have as much time to do those things as you would like, but for both you and your loved one, keep doing those things that you love so you always have those enjoyable things to go back to. I can't tell you how many times I get to doing a class like this with sergeants or those that have been on the job for 10 plus years. They don't even know what they love anymore because they haven't been doing them. Or they think, oh, bingo, I totally forgot I love golfing and I haven't been in 5 years. As best you can, keep doing what you love. Plan, plan, and plan again. It is much better and easier to prepare than it is to repair. Let me say that again. Plan and prepare is way better and way easier than to try to repair. And I'll touch on that in a second when I talk about resources, but if you plan and prepare to be disappointed or plan to not be able to see each other very much for the next month, now you're prepared for what that's going to look like, rather than at each other's throats or completely withdrawn from one another or your family members. You've been prepared for what you're experiencing, and not having to go back and say, oh, well, that was bad, I'm sorry, or that sucked. How can we avoid that next time? So plan and prepare so you don't have to repair. Continuing education and personal growth. I highly recommend The Emotional Survival for Law Enforcement. Make that your #1 personal growth book to read, and flip through it. I'm not a big fan of reading books cover to cover, especially when they're full of material and education. Look at the table of contents, find what sounds interesting, and go to that chapter. This way you'll get more interested in the content. And continue to grow, continue to educate yourself about law enforcement culture, about how to have conversations with little kids, with your little kids about the job that you do. Continue moving in that direction. What does success look like to you? That goes back to how will you know if your marriage and family is thriving, but a little bit different. What will success look like to you? Will you be happy? Will you be content? Will you have material wealth, a house, a boat, a river house? I don't know. What will it look like? Or will you feel satisfied and fulfilled? Identify that now. Both of you, everyone in your family, what does success look like to you? That's an often missed priority that people forget to set, is identifying, how will I know I'm succeeding in life? You don't want to get back to your life and go, oh, I missed it. You want to say, oh, I'm succeeding because I have peace, or my family is content, or because I've got 10 grand in the bank, or whatever. Define what that looks like to you. So services that are available, the great thing about, I can say I can't identify every department that's here right now, but from what I've seen in teaching at the academy, every department is covered and has services, employee support services, which includes your immediate family members living in your home through the counseling team. So the department pays for it. You don't need authorization. You get to call us directly, and your name doesn't show up on a bill. It's completely confidential. Our headquarters is in San Bernardino, and we have satellite offices all throughout Southern California and actually on up to Central California. So likely wherever you are, there is a counseling team office available. And right now there's a lot of telehealth services happening. So if you needed to just, hey, I need to really just debrief with a therapist on this kind of stuff, we're great listeners and have a lot of insight in with regard to this law enforcement culture. So don't be afraid to check that out. I think the phone number, the phone number is there, the Counseling Team International, and you can call it directly. You don't need permission. So I want to make sure that I answer any questions or clarify anything that you need. So feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question if you'd like. Is that a hand? Do you have a hand? Hi. Any questions? Can you hear me? You guys can hear me, right? Okay, good. Whew. Can you imagine if you couldn't hear me through that whole thing? That would have sucked. Spouses, loved ones, come on, you gotta have a question. You got to. I know you do. And if you do, likely someone else has that same question. That's how it works. You could even put it in the chat box if you wanted to, I think. How happy are you to not be on campus right now? A little bit happy? You kind of miss it, huh? 3 weeks? 2 weeks? I can't hear you. I'm gonna unmute you. Ah.
2 days. I guess we're in tomorrow.
Oh, you're going back in tomorrow.
It's been Wednesday.
Okay, got it. Going back in 2 days. Got it. When you've been out for a week and a half, 2 weeks?
Week and a half.
Got it. Got it. Yeah. I didn't get the call that you guys a bunch of people tested positive until I had a sore throat on Monday. And I'm like, what's the deal with this sore throat? Then my ex-husband calls me and he's like, did you hear that 33 positive tests at the academy? Weren't you just there? I was like, oh, crap. So I went and got tested. I was negative. It was just a coincidence. But that I had to quarantine with my daughter while we were waiting for the test. And is everybody okay? Did anybody get really sick? I know there was one guy that was really sick, but I don't know about anybody else.
Everyone that tested positive came out good. They're good. Everyone's healthy now.
Everybody's good?
As far as I know.
All right. All right. Good deal. How many weeks in are you now?
We graduate this week. We're on the 24th week.
Oh my gosh. You're almost there. So we have any juniors on? Oh no, this is only for senior class anyway.
Senior class.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Got it. All right.
Thursday. Graduate Thursday.
Oh, look at this. I don't know how to say his name. Teo date.
Oh, Theo Day.
Yeah, he just got here. Let me see if I know how to. Wait, where did he go? There was a admit, and then he left. Oh.
Someone has a question too, ma'am.
Yes, please.
Oh no, someone asked you a question in the chat.
Oh, thank you. Let me try to open that. Hold on. Okay. How do you handle friends who disagree with law enforcement? Do you want my politically correct response? I'm joking, of course. Any tips on what to say? Unfortunately, right now, while emotions are still very high, it's going to be challenging to have conversations that end well. So if there is an inherent disagreement or lack of support, you may just have to distance yourself. Now, if you are open to conversation, by all means, feel free to educate. But even as the professional in this field, I've had a really hard time having conversations with people. And I'm talking people on my level that are just not in law enforcement, in the law enforcement culture, like therapists and other psychologists. It hasn't been very positive, unfortunately. My best advice for you is to stay curious. Stay curious. Ask questions. Listen for the content rather than the emotion, because I think a lot of people are reacting very emotionally to all of this. And of course, I have my position. I think that law enforcement is very, very well needed. There should not be any defunding. We're going to see a lot of problems if that happens. Based on LA County's stuff going on, that whole plan just looks scary to me. So I hope that answered your question. I don't think it had really a lot of important things to offer you, but I hope that was helpful. Yeah, I guess in other words, stay out of it. We've got the haters and the supporters, and unfortunately we're having a hard time winning over the haters. Yeah, I don't know what else to say. There can be 99% fantastic cops in the world, and the world is going to focus on that one bad one. But that's the case with everything, right? Do you know a bad mechanic? Do you know a bad therapist? Do you know a bad doctor? You know, they exist in every profession, but the responsibility and the power is so highly placed on law enforcement that there's just this overreaction to any amount of negativity. And I blame the media. I really do. That's my personal opinion. The media is driving a lot of this, meaning they keep pushing in our faces all the bad stuff that's happening. And so then it looks like pretty soon that's all that's happening. Do you ever hear good news on the news? Very rarely, unfortunately. And there's a lot of fantastic, good things happening in law enforcement. The community is coming together. It's been beautiful. The support has been very well recognized and received. What is the best way? This is a good question. Oh, did I stop sharing? Okay. What is the best way to talk to your children about what daddy does? This is a very common question, and it really varies on your child. You know your child best, and kind of my rule of thumb is if they're asking the question, they want to know the answer. And with regard to details, it depends on the age of the child. For instance, I didn't start sharing much detail about the work I do. I do a lot of critical incidents with law enforcement. I didn't share a lot with my daughter until she was about 13, 14. But that's what worked best for us. And I'm not a cop, but she would get scared and she would say, Mom, I'm worried that, you're going over there and you could get hurt or shot. And I would always just say, honey, that's not going to be the case. I'm safe. I will be in a safe location. There will be other officers there to protect me. So I think it's important to address the questions as they come up and talk to your child the way you know they can manage the information. And what's interesting is us as parents tend to get a little more hyper around our kids, meaning we're afraid we're going to tell our kids something and they're going to lose their minds. That's not really what happens. We get more worried about their reactions than they actually get worried. And here's a good example. Unfortunately, I've had to do death notification to children. Not going to go into it wasn't law enforcement, but let me just say that. But kids, so I'm talking to the kid, right? And this is what happened. And they're like, okay, Mom, what's for dinner? But Mom gets freaked out. Like, what is wrong with my kid? How come they're not crying? I'm like, your kid just doesn't understand yet, doesn't really know how to process that yet. So watch your kid And here's, kids communicate in behaviors more than anything. So if they are acting out, if they, right, you know when they need a nap, right? When they're throwing a fit, you're like, oh, you need a nap, right? They're showing you in their behavior. They're not telling you you're tired. They're tired. In fact, they're saying I'm not tired when clearly they are, right? So go by their behavior. You got to be good at reading their behavior. If they're crying and clingy and feeling needy, check in and remind them of how they're safe. Remind them how, yeah, I miss daddy too, or I miss mommy too, and they're safe and they'll be home soon. Safety and love are the two things kids need. That's it, to know they're loved and to know they're safe. Now, safety comes in different packages, but those are key to a child's flourishing. So watch their behavior. I know we're not in school either right now, but if you have school-aged kids, behavior comes out a lot at school. So if they're getting in trouble at school or getting in fights or things like that, those are red flags. If they're having stomach aches or headaches, those are red flags. Something's going on. Their little body is upset about something. So check in with them. And communication, one more time, is key. So, yeah. You're welcome. You're welcome. Any other questions? Oh, I see a little guy. Hi, little guy. How sweet. I kept it simple when my kid was little and daddy went to work. Daddy's a good guy and he's going to go get the bad guys. But whatever works for you and your family. Now, I know, Teodate, you got some questions. I know you do. And if you're listening, I know you got questions. You always got questions. You're my favorite question asker. I don't see his little thumbnail, but he looks muted and his video is off.
How you doing, man?
How's it going?
Going good, man. It's going good.
Excellent. It's so good to hear your voice.
No problem. No problem. I'm tuning in. I'm listening to everything. My wife's right here listening. So
Oh, good, good. We did record this, so I think we can send you the link to it because I don't know if you were able to see the whole thing.
Okay. No, I wasn't able to see the whole thing.
Okay. So it would be helpful, I'm sure, to go back. Well, do you or your wife have any questions?
You have any questions?
No, we were just catching what you were saying and just listening. So I can't wait to listen to the rest of it. So then
Okay, good.
I'm excited.
Good.
Because the kids are like so crazy in the background.
Oh, got it. Yeah, you might have to put them to bed and watch it later.
Definitely.
Good. All right. Well, does anyone else have any questions or need something clarified? Anything at all? No? Does graduation have to be on Zoom too? Oh, I'm sorry. I see another baby. Hi, baby.
I just wanted to
Hello.
my baby is cuter than his baby.
Oh, I love the babies. Look at all the kids. Hi. Did you guys have a question?
No, we're just listening in. Appreciate all your help. Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thanks for showing off the baby. And I see a beautiful little girl up there in the middle. Hi. Hi. Dad, she's talking to me. All right. Well, if no one has any questions, I want to say thank you so much for taking this time and checking in. Please get the book. I will send you, I think I can send the link to the recording of this. Hope to God it recorded. Yeah, it looks like it did. So you can revisit it. And as always, if you need anything from me, please don't hesitate to contact me. You know what? I'm even going to put my email in the chat. So if you need anything, I'm here. Okay. There it is. Hopefully y'all saw that. All right. Well, have a wonderful rest of your night. Good luck going back to the academy. And congratulations on your graduation coming up.
Thank you, ma'am.
See you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, ma'am.
You're very welcome. Bye-bye.
Mm-hmm.